And I don't think we ask ourselves enough questions at an early enough age. What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? What do you think you're good at right now? I have lived my entire life in a hurry, and it has not gotten me anything good. Slow down. Just slow down. Good morning. How are you?
You look great.
Yeah, everyone's been saying that, but going to a funeral. I was watching a documentary the other day about the tsunami that hit the Indian Ocean in, I believe, 2014. Yeah. And I mean, devastating. Like, no warning. And to watch the footage of so many people who were like watching people die, you know, just get swept away by these massive, massive tsunami waves. Unable to help, like total strangers, and to see them like well up recounting something from a decade ago about how devastating it was to just not be able to do something for someone that you're seeing in great distress. That really got me. To have so much grief and regret later about not like a loved one. You know, we lose loved ones all the time, and that grief is very palpable and relevant, and maybe relevant's a bad word. Immediate. But to see people like really, really still messed up about seeing just a person that they don't know, you know, that they couldn't do anything for. I think it just goes to show that suffering is very connecting.
You said connecting?
I think so.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like, I don't know what someone else is going through, and I might not have any idea of the very specific circumstances that's causing them suffering. But I don't need to understand how suffering affects people. And I can see that and be able to say, man, I understand that grief, that sorrow, that depression, that loss. And you used, I think you said humanity or human or
common humanity.
Yeah, like it's something I think. Well, I can say I know, but I believe and I know points to a higher being. Points to something much more universal that we all share than we think we do. Like, yeah, you know, you see people suffering and you sometimes overlook it because maybe the circumstances you don't understand or you can't relate to. But do you need to relate to anything other than, I know what it feels like to have grief. Sure. I know what deep grief feels like. Another culture, another country, long time ago. And there's people all over the world enduring all sorts of grief. And that's something common that we have on a very, very base level, which connects humanity.
I think you painted that pretty well. What comes to mind in my response is that, like, the question of like why does God, why does the divine allow things to happen? I don't know. But what's a little bit clear, I think, is that what you just explained is like, we may not know, but it has opportunity for like a connection that goes beyond like surface level.
I think there's so much there, and that question is very divisive. Mm-hmm. That question tears apart friendships, a family connection, Republicans, I mean, like that question, like, if there's a God, why is there so much evil? It's very, very divisive. And there's a lot of good explanations on both sides, but I think at the very like foundational level, just because there is so much bad does not negate the existence of God, meaning that they're not mutually exclusive. And there's more than enough, I think, we don't have to get into them necessarily, but there's more than enough arguments that show that they're kind of two completely separate things. But it's tough. It's a hard question to answer. You know, I'm starting to get questions like that from my kids. And it's really, really difficult to explain to a child. Well, if there's a God who loves you so much, but there's still a lot of bad things, and where that fits in terms of free will and personal choice, and but that stuff's over my head.
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand that there is a lot of suffering, but how can we use that to bring people closer?
Sure. Yeah. I tend to look at stoicism. Like one of their baseline checks is like control what you can control. And yeah, there's arguments and there's probably some value in, sitting on the question of why. But I feel like you can get stuck there. And then instead of like taking action on your circle of agency, or, psychology speak, the locus of control, of like, what do I actually have agency over to like produce good or love more or whatever? I think that gets sidelined in honor of the question of why. And it's just like this circular spiral.
And they're important questions for us to reconcile and rationalize. But I think at the end of the day, and that's one of the things that we get lost in every day, is like, what can we control? Mm-hmm. And so, notwithstanding the whys and all these other really, really great thought-provoking questions, I think when you bring it back to its core, it's like we control very little. Mm. Like at the end of the day, what can we actually control? And so if we focus on what we can control, we have a much greater impact than we know. Because I can't control what other people think about me, what other people say about me. I can't control outcomes. There's this lady on social media. I've been following her. Gosh, she's brilliant. I forget her name. I'm going to remember it. There's this thing she says. She says, let them. Let them. I'm not taking credit for that. It's all her, but let them. Let them think, let them say, let them do. You can't control that stuff. But what you can control is, what do I think? What do I say? What do I do? What am I doing today? What am I doing in this moment?
Why do we get lost?
I think at a very base level, human beings are generally control freaks. Well, like whatever that means. Just we like to exercise a great deal of control over our lives, our destinies, over the outcome of situations, over interactions, engagements, agreements. That's not a bad thing, but if you let that control go to a place where now all your thought is in the outcome and what other people are doing, you can't control that stuff anyway. Yeah. Right? Like, so we think about it and we plot and we scheme, but we can't control anything. Even like in business, we make an agreement, we shake hands, and there's a certain set of things you're going to do and a certain set of things I'm going to do. I can't control anything you're going to do. I can barely control the stuff that I'm supposed to do. I'm talking in generalities here, but sure. And so the entire thought, the entire the entire dimension and direction goes to something that we have no control over.
Sure.
And then what happens? Thoughts, thoughts about outcomes.
Yeah, the mind fills the space like almost by default.
And that can be dangerous because, like as we've said several times, 99% of the things we worry about never actually happen. And those can be outcomes, plans, things that we want to have control over. I can't control who my kids are going to marry. I can't control where my kids are going to go to college. I'm just using an example that's fairly relevant in my life.
I just thought of a term for that. Like, what's your uncertainty index? Like, I don't know how you qualify that, but
100%.
like,
isn't it all uncertain?
right.
We're saying this now calmly, and we're cool about it. Once we leave this room, are we good with uncertainty?
Yeah.
Because uncertainty is what? It's discomfort. And we don't like discomfort. So we don't like uncertainty. That's, natural. But the best of the best out there have learned to embrace uncertainty. And I think to a large degree, faith plays a lot into that. But uncertainty is not bad. It's just not known. Since we don't know it, we're afraid of it.
I think we were framing that opening story in your dialogue on more of a like interpersonal and maybe personal level of like, how do we deal with uncertainty and loss? Let's keep that same topic, but like, how have you historically taken L's in business versus how you take them now? And is there a difference, or maybe it's the same? I don't know.
Many of my friends are surfers. Those days are lost on me. I've never been a surfer. Although when I first moved to Southern California, I went all in. Mm-hmm. My wife will tell you, I bought a wetsuit, like 3 days into it, never used it, not one. Although I have been on a surfboard and I've actually gotten up one time. Mm-hmm. Will never happen again.
Retire while you're on top, man. That's it.
I got up for 1 second. I'm good. What I love about surfers, it's kind of beautiful when you look at it. They're all out there 45 minutes. And sometimes if you go to a lot of our beautiful beaches here in Southern California, you'll see a sea of surfers all waiting for one wave. Obviously, depending on the day, a lot of waves, not a lot of waves, but all waiting patiently. Sometimes they see the one and they start paddling out and they're fighting for one wave. You're on that wave for 4, 5, 6 seconds. I don't know. And then it's over. And then you're not on a wave anymore. Now you're either trying to paddle out to catch another wave, or possibly at risk of being smashed by a wave, or the day's done. You only caught one wave. Some days you don't catch any. You're just out all day, nothing. And I think that's where it comes into play. You asked about business specifically, but it's not all about wins. It's about just getting on the wave, enjoying it, understanding it, maybe analyzing it, see how you could do better next time, but understanding that the wave is going to crash or the wave might not come. And that's okay. I think part of the joy is just being out there. There's got to be, I actually think from someone who sucks at surfing, right? One time. It's just being out there.
Just getting out.
In the vast unknown of the ocean, and just the water's all around you and the sun, and you're just out there. Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of enjoying it. And if you get that opportunity, awesome.
So the game is just getting out there.
Yeah. Without any expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to use another analogy, it's like fishing. Mm-hmm. I took my oldest fishing one time and he started to get frustrated. Mm-hmm. You may or may not get a fish. That's why it's called fishing, not, catching.
Yeah.
Or winning. I don't know. but it's called fishing. You may or may not catch a fish.
Yeah.
When you catch one, it's awesome. Who knows how long it's going to take to catch another one? But it's really all just about getting out there.
Yeah.
And trying to catch a fish.
I'm going to butcher this, but hopefully I catch the essence. It's most men go out to fish not knowing that they go out not wanting to fish. Like fishing's not the reason they're going out.
No, it's catching the fish.
And that always stuck with me because it's like, man, why am I doing anything?
Mm.
There's like a surface level like entry point of like, and then there's usually like a secondary, third, or even third, like meaning or purpose. So like what you're doing.
But I guess it's understanding that fishing is part of the catching.
Yeah.
If not 98% of it.
Yep.
And might take a lot of time. That might look like a lot of things, but we often have to take stock of why we're doing things.
Sure.
So we understand that the journey is part of the destination.
Yep.
And that journey's not just going to be riding a wave the whole time. You're out there, you're paddling, you're fighting, you're waiting. You may not catch that wave.
I like the surfing analogy. One thing that comes to mind is how to, I guess, integrate or reconcile. Like, unless you're completely renounced and you're just living in a mountain or something or a monastery, like as a householder, you have multiple aspects of life where, and I'm just off the cuff making this up, but if we're using surfing as an analogy, there may be one aspect of your life where you're catching like a 10-footer, like right now. In other areas, it's flat. In some areas, it's like, how do you hold all that? It feels like you got to pivot on a dime in a lot of ways when you have, a meaningful but busy life. And the waves are different heights or non-existent. And
I think that's the beauty of I hope, next 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
It's that I'm not chasing the wave. I'm just out there.
Yeah.
If it comes, awesome.
I get the sense that you have chased the wave.
I spent the first part of my life chasing all the waves, and not realizing that, you just got to be out there waiting, paddling, sitting. The wave might not come, and that's okay. And just as you're saying right now, there might be small waves, probably a lot of crashes, a lot of wipeouts, right?
So I guess what would qualify as, I don't know, this is not the best word, but losing, not being in the water?
I think it's probably a combination of, yes, not being out there, regardless of what's happening. You're just out there, right? That's a win. I think taking the losses for more than what they are, which it's just part of it.
Yeah,
it's just part of it. And it's okay to not win all the time. It's just not even sustainable to just win.
Yeah.
You learn a lot from the losses, and the losses that means you're still out there. And like I said, I think that's what the next 40 years are. I hope is just sitting back and appreciating the wins and relishing the losses and understanding that every day I wake up, I get another chance to do a lot of things right. And I'm going to mess up, and that's okay. And it's okay. It's totally okay. As long as I don't stay down and I get back up. I think switching your mindset to that radically shifts how you see the world. Because now you're eager to wake up, regardless of what's going to happen. You're eager to wake up not knowing what's going to happen. Now the uncertainty is you're fine with it.
Yeah. When you say, I hope the next 40 years of my life, I like that. Do you feel resourced to do that?
I feel more resourced than I was many years ago. but I don't think the learning will ever stop.
Sure.
I think there's just so many more things that I'm aware of, now, having gone through a lot of losses and blissful youth, and just recognizing that the tempo of life is unknown and up and down, and that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
We were before we got on today. You were telling me a little bit about the funeral you're going to, and it reminded me of a recent loss I had. A dear aunt in our family. Everyone loved her, and this was probably in July or August. There was like a barbecue we had. My son Phoenix is 7, and he spent 3 hours with her, just like joking and laughing. And she spoke very little English, but they communicated on like a nonverbal level. And that picture in my mind has just kind of been lingering, because after her funeral, Phoenix asked me, like, Papa, are you going to die too? And I told him, yeah, it's part of life, and kind of just gave him enough to be truthful, but we didn't go down the rabbit hole or anything. But later on, it was like, man, it kind of level set, like, me to reality. It's like, man, this is not a rehearsal. This is like, there is a timeline to this whole deal, even though my younger self thinks there's a lot of time left. And, there's decades, hopefully. But it also was like an interesting, like, reframe on how I want to do the rest of it. And what you said in regards to like the next 40 years of my life, it's like, yeah, I want to do things. I still have ambition, but I want to do it in a certain way that feels like I just honor life. I know it's very vague, but it was just like more of like a heart perspective thing.
It's not. And I love that so much. And what I'm most excited about is that I've finally come to the realization that on average at 40, I might have 40 years. Well, I might. My life is probably more than 50% over. And that one.
Yeah.
And so when you're younger, you don't think like that. When you're younger, there is no expiration date. We're just not wired to think like that. But once you get to this age, reality sets in that, to paraphrase from you, this is not a rehearsal.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
You get this time to do whatever you're going to do. And I think it's really interesting for guys in their quote midlives. I think we're acutely aware of our mortality, and that generally makes us more purpose driven. It's like, well, okay, so what am I going to do? I'll tell you all the stuff that I was chasing in my 20s and 30s. I can care less about. I don't think I'm going to have a newfound appreciation for accumulating wealth for the sake of, not now. I'm more about, I just had this conversation with my therapist, like, because my oldest is 9, and I'm like, how many more years do I really have his attention?
Right.
Talk about timelines, right?
Yeah.
Like, not 20. I hope so. But like, how many more years am I as big of a deal in his mind as I am now, that I can plant these seeds,
right,
and help them blossom?
Yeah.
So that maybe he's still going to make a bunch of mistakes, and I want him to, and I want him to learn from him, obviously. And no parent wants to see their child suffer at all, but we, to a certain extent, want the accountability of life to do its thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I hope I'm able to plant these seeds that maybe he just realizes what I'm realizing now 10 years earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 10 more years, because at the end of the day, we still don't know what the expiration date is. We're just kind of going.
We're assuming.
We're assuming a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the twist, where you start living life not as an assumption.
Yeah.
tomorrow is not assumed.
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to have it. What have I done? You know?
Yeah.
How have I impacted the ones that I love? How have I impacted anyone? Have I impacted anyone?
At the risk of sounding kind of like overusing, if that's a word, like personal mission comes to mind of like, what is that for you? And that's going to look different from person to person, obviously. But I think these types of questions or reframes or perspectives kind of point towards that direction of like, what is my mission as a human? Both like individually and collectively. Like, what does that look like? We don't have to like flesh that out now, but it just makes me think of that. Because the default, right? There's a lot of defaults you can just latch onto if that's not a something you either constantly remember or even have.
Yeah. I see the danger in that because I'll speak for myself. I had a lot of default missions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The sex, drugs, rock and roll, money, power. Right.
There's a lot of default missions available and easily packaged as a long-term mission.
100%.
I think that's the trick. I think that's the massive illusion. And the earlier you can even start thinking about it, the better off.
And I think society is getting there. I do generally.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
I think there's an awareness of like we're not the center of the universe. There's suffering and inequality all over the world. And I think generally most people understand like, how do I fit and interact with that? Like, so that my default mission is not just accumulate.
This is a good lead into this short little. If you're watching, Peter Drucker, Managing Oneself. This is a great read. Short, easy to digest, but this is a little tidbit. This piece is called Where Do I Belong?
I wish the personal mission of my life was managing myself. Where were you 20 years ago?
A small number of people know very early where they belong. Mathematicians, musicians, and cooks, for instance, usually are mathematicians, musicians, and cooks by the time they're a pretty young age. Physicians, too, usually decide on their careers earlier in their teens, if not earlier. But most people, particularly smart people, do not really know where they belong until they're well past their mid-20s. By that time, however, they should know the answers to the following three questions. What are my strengths? How do I perform in that strength? And what are my values? And then they can decide where they belong. Or rather, they should be able to decide where they do not belong. The person who has learned that he or she does not perform well in a big organization should have learned to say no to a position in one. The person who has learned that he or she is not a decision maker should have learned to say no to a decision-making assignment. A General Patton, who probably never learned this himself, as General Patton, should have learned to say no to an independent command. Equally important, the answers to these questions enable a person to say yes to opportunities that make sense. Yes, I'll do that, but in this way, I should be doing it. This is the way it should be structured. This is the way the relationship should be. These are the kinds of results you should expect from me. And in this frame, this is who I am. Successful lives and careers are usually not planned. They develop when people are prepared for opportunities because they know their strengths and their method of work and their values.
A lot there. A lot of good stuff. I guess I would summarize all that with saying managing oneself starts with knowing oneself. And I don't think we ask ourselves enough questions at an early enough age, guided or otherwise.
Yeah.
What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? What do you think you're good at right now? Do you like coloring? Do you like building Legos? And you know, I think a lot of kids get asked these questions, but I think parents tend to like default assume what their kids are good at. For example, if a kid is great at a particular sport, it doesn't mean that's what they want to do.
Sure.
I think you have some specific experience, being really, really good at something and it not necessarily being what you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you developed a love for being good at it,
Yep.
which is just fine as well. But I think if we ask our children earlier and more frequently, what do you like to do? What do you think you're good at? Do you enjoy it? Why do you enjoy it? I think it's easier to flesh out questions like, what am I not good at? What do I absolutely not enjoy?
Sure.
And there's a time and a place, right? Like most kids don't enjoy math.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know enough of it to get on.
Yep.
But you absolutely don't love, the traditional faculties. Maybe vocation in the traditional faculties not up your alley.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, I love that. I love even hearing what you just said. I think we can always stand to hear more of it.
Sure.
Which is like, they're the core questions of who am I?
Yeah.
Like, what do I enjoy doing? What do I not enjoy doing? Not just what annoys me, but like what things am I not good at?
Right.
And it's okay. It's okay. It's really important to take stock. It's the age old interview question. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Right. But we don't actually ask those questions introspectively enough. What is my strength and why am I really, really strong at it? Likewise, what is my weakness and why am I not good at it? And that's okay either way, but knowing allows you to ask deeper questions that get to the core of what's going to give you fulfillment, not just success.
When I first went through that as well, I went to similar places. You was like, okay, these kind of forming questions should kind of start entering scene at, early age for your kids and so on and so forth. But then I thought about, man, what if I were to do that to me as if I were like a 65-year-old mentor to myself? And that was interesting. I still need to kind of work through those things, but it was interesting to kind of frame it that way at this point in my life of like, let's take stock. Let's see. Have I gotten good at things for the approval of others? Did I get good at it because I wanted to get good at it? Where am I going now? What am I good at and where am I going now? So it was cool to kind of zoom out a little bit because I have kids too. So it's like, okay, let's just start kind of like implementing this with some of my kids. But then it was like, for me.
I love that. I still don't think I asked that question enough. I just assume I know what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I know all the things I'm not good at.
Yeah.
I think I'm acutely aware of most of the things I'm not good at. I'm sure there's more, but I don't often ask myself why I'm good at the things I'm good at. And like, how can I grow that?
Yeah.
I could tell you conclusively, I don't think I ever asked that question.
Yeah.
Before 35.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever asked myself, what am I good at? What am I not good at? Ever. I don't recall ever being asked that outside of like a formal interview.
Right.
What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Right.
I just don't.
It almost feels like, and I'm guilty of it too, of like, we're not on our side enough.
Yeah.
Of like, dude, you're really good at this, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you've worked hard to be good at this.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Yes.
That's historically been a shortcoming for me.
Yes.
But I'll say it up front. Like, it feels good to do that for myself when I can do it.
I love that because what we're usually doing is waiting for somebody else to tell us we're good at something.
You got to crown yourself sometimes.
I think you have to crown yourself a lot. Not too much.
Right.
But enough to recognize you're doing a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, I don't think this is like a clinically valid term, but the phrase like reparenting yourself. of kind of like assuming the parent role for yourself in whatever version or need that was unmet, kind of being that for yourself. That's been an interesting exercise for me. Does that ring a bell for you, or have you experienced that at all?
Yeah, that is we did that very early on in therapy. Focus on little me.
Yeah.
And what's he seeing? What's he hearing? What's he feeling?
Right.
What has he wished maybe he saw and heard and felt? Because there's a lot of bad things that he saw and heard and felt. And it is absolutely important. I love that framework that you just posited. How do you go back and slowly parent that child?
Yeah.
Better. Not to say our, parents did anything wrong, but they weren't perfect. And a large part of our adult lives is spent correcting some of those mistakes, right? As best we can with what we know now. So yeah, that hits home.
What questions are you thinking about lately?
I mean, the biggest one is my oldest son. I just feel like I'm running out of time, man.
Oh, you're feeling that now?
I feel it. And I'm like,
why?
Life's not slowing down enough, but his is not stopping.
So it's like opposite directions.
Not necessarily opposite directions, but I feel like I've already missed a lot. I can't undo that.
Yeah.
And he's going to keep growing. And I'm like, I crave that one-on-one connection.
Yeah.
I'm desperate for it. Every chance that I get, and I wish I had more. You asked what questions. There's not much going on up here.
Yeah. Is that your default, or is that different?
Is what my default?
Not having many questions. Is that how you historically have been?
It's something I've been trying to get out of recently. I think it's just because there's a lot going on, and a lot of noise, and a lot of distractions. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the light of managing oneself, really asking these deep introspective questions, I don't think we talk to ourselves enough. From the validation standpoint, from the questioning our thoughts, all of it. I should be doing a better job.
Talking to yourself.
Yeah. And in a very healthy way, like you're talking about questions, just self-assessing.
Yeah.
What am I feeling? Where am I? How do I feel that I'm here? What's something really important for myself that I can do this week? Something really important for my son that I can do this week. I don't ask enough questions.
In the context of in your son, what do you want him to see? How do you want him to experience you?
Some deep stuff, bro. I want my son to know that as imperfect as I am, I love him with every fiber of my being. That I love him no matter what he does, accomplishes or doesn't, or that I want him to see me as a man who always tried to be better at everything he did. Is that cliche? I don't know. But I want him to know that I love him dearly.
Did you have that perspective with your own father?
No.
Do you think that drives how you want your son to see you?
I'm sure it has a large part to do with it.
How do you talk to yourself about how you want your son to see you? Like, what's the narrative?
Be gentle more often. Be understanding faster. Forgive furiously.
I mean, oh, that's good. Tell me more about that. Forgive furiously.
We hold on to dumb things for too long. Put your shoes on 9 times, and then the 10th time you just lose it.
Yeah.
Take away a toy, crying, and it's like, maybe he didn't hear me. Maybe he doesn't want to put his shoes on. And who cares? Who gives a shit? Who cares if he doesn't want to put his shoes on? Is it worth that build up and fallout?
Yeah.
So just forgive furiously and move on quickly.
Yeah, that's so good. It reminds me of like it comes from like Eastern philosophy, but they always use this analogy of like you're the sky and everything else is the clouds. Like sometimes big cloud, rain cloud, light cloud, particularly with the small stuff like put your shoes on 9 times or didn't load the dishwasher. Like in the moment it feels so real, but then it's like if you can just find that like belvedere, that perspective, like man, it actually doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. But what matters is the response, the fallout.
Yeah.
So, yeah. In general, I think my dad did the best job that he could with what he had.
Sure.
He didn't have any of the resources I have. So I think when it comes to my children in general, I'm just really hell-bent on deploying those resources faster. And I think part of the reason why I have so much guilt is because my oldest son is 9. My youngest is 5. So I have 5 more years, and the oldest son was the guinea pig.
Yeah.
And that just kills me. I learned so much that I'm still not good at. I'm still practicing.
Yeah.
But that listen quicker, understand faster, forgive furiously. He's just barely starting to get that. And I'm still messing up.
Yeah.
And I just, that's so unfair to me. Not to me. I feel like
I think it goes back to the opening conversation of, okay, that we're at where we're at. How am I going to be moving forward?
Yeah.
You say guinea pig with your first son. That reminded me of my own deal because I have an older brother, but he's from my mom's first marriage. So I was like technically first for my dad, and he put me through the ringer. And then my sister and I, who's 7 years younger, we sometimes talk about how he was a different version for each of us.
Sure.
And we usually fall on like, yeah, he was just figuring it out with me in a lot of ways. Like he didn't know better. He just did what he could. And I happened to be the first one. And so it's one of those things like, that's how it happened. How am I going to be moving forward?
There was no manual. He did the best that he could. He figured stuff out as he went. And he probably didn't even, like now we have people, therapists, friends, psychologists telling us, no, don't do this. No.
Yeah.
Like, don't do this, do this. Hey, be careful about the way you say this. So we're those are the resources I'm talking about.
Yep.
We're getting much quicker analysis on the spot execution of our methodology or speech or frameworks that they didn't have access to at all.
Yep.
And that's kind of a great thing, it's all over social media.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously be careful who you listen to, but if it smells like a duck and quacks like a duck, right? So in general, you can tell sound parenting advice, sound mindset frameworks, right? Generally speaking. And so I'm happy it'll trickle down to my youngest, but I can't help but feel a little like, man, I messed up so much on the first one.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time there?
Probably more time than I should.
Yeah.
And even that I'm wrestling with because I'm always trying to wrestle with past regrets in general.
Sure.
And regrets can lead to resentments.
What's the reward value for you
to spend time there?
Yeah. Or perceived reward, I guess.
If done right, just to redirect my present and future self.
Yeah. Do you know when it turns into not productive?
If you're spinning.
Yeah.
I as a general rule of thumb, if I'm sitting there for 10 minutes ruminating on how much regrets I have for not being a better, more present father, it's kind of like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
You messed up. What are we going to do with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, 10, 15 minutes is kind of like, okay, like, what are you going to do with it now? You know, you're correct, but you're changing things and you're going to take that moving forward.
Sure. I forget the author, but I think the title is Getting to Yes. Are you familiar?
I heard of it.
But there's a little tidbit in there and it says, and this can be professional or familial, let's recall to get this frame right, is when there is either no mission or there's a forgotten mission, each side usually over indexes on their position.
Okay.
And so you just get in this like, I'm right, you're wrong type of thing.
Sure.
And then there's no blended consensus that is like tied to the mission. And it is, like lately there's been, my wife and I have just been having pretty deep conversations and there's like tension and disagreements. And I'm trying to hold on to that like piece of like, I feel this way. I have this perspective. I have this view. But what's the ultimate mission of us?
Sure.
And is there a path or is there a way to blend our positions that still serves the mission?
99% of, I would say, bad fights with my wife, friends, business partners, probably is rooted one way or another in that you get caught up in the momentary disagreement without realizing there's a whole other, okay, you're still going to be married or at least want to. You still want to be married in 40 years, on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Same thing for business. It's like, okay, we really disagree about this thing.
Mm-hmm. That's the position.
Right now, but what's there's an ocean here.
Yeah.
Of decisions, visions. So yeah.
When we talk about it, it sounds kind of like, well, yeah, of course, like no shit, right? But it might be valuable to like either know it or just put it on the table if you can. Like, look, this is what we're here to do, like largely as a collective, and then get into like the details or the positions because it's usually just go straight to your position. Like this is why I'm right.
I would say, and I'm not good at this at all, but speaking to myself now, I think that's necessary.
Yeah.
Is to always put that out there and say, okay, let's work backwards now.
It should be first, right? Like
Sure.
put it on the table. This
Sure.
this is the mission. We're trying to grow to 30 million, whatever, or we're trying to be married forever, whatever it is. Like that should be first.
I'm trying to raise a son who loves me and knows I love him.
Yeah.
And then you go to the position and putting on the shoes, who cares?
But the default is to go to position.
Sure.
In a lot of ways. And I don't know why we picked that up. Maybe because so many people do it. That's just how it's done and everyone just does it that way. I don't
Sure.
know. Closing quotes. I did want to get your perspective on this. I'll read the quote and let you rip. Divine madness is the willingness to face difficulties and challenges on the path to enlightenment without unwavering determination and belief in the transformative power of spiritual growth. Carl Jung. But the first two words, divine madness, I looked in that a little bit and there's different versions of it of people saying people who are truly divinely mad are seen as like insane, but usually the most centered.
Hmm.
And you can spin that off in different ways. But in psychological world, there's this therapist called, or his name is Piero Ferrucci, and he talks about eccentric people. He isolates factors of eccentric people, saying like, the one that comes to mind is this lady collects eggshells. And people see her as like insane. But like from a measurable standpoint, she's actually like very peaceful. Like if you take her through tests and stuff. So that word divine madness is like, it strikes some curiosity in me. I'm wondering how you take that.
I don't know if I have anything on that one. But something to ponder for sure.
Yeah.
Divine madness.
I tend to go to like the aesthetics and the monks of like, it's just so there's such an equanimity about them that it's that like that's seen as like almost crazy, like nothing or not much can touch them in regards to being thrown off their perch by what most people get thrown off by.
Yeah, I don't know. Can't got my tongue on that one.
Yeah,
but that's good. That's okay. Something to think about.
it's all good.
Yeah,
Something will come later, possibly.
maybe.
Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life, for hurry is the great enemy of your inner world. Dallas Willard.
Genius writer, by the way.
Yeah.
We should start with that one next time. So much to talk about there.
We'll unpack that one.
But I will say, hurry is the enemy of everything. Hurry is the enemy of, and we've gotten to a place, I blame, same day shipping, same day delivery, where we just want everything in a hurry. And we're conditioned faster is better. And as I'm getting older, I'm literally just realizing, no, you got to stop, slow down. Hurry is the enemy of everything.
Yeah. It sounds like you feel that in your bones now. Like that feels real to you. It sounds like. Because people can say that.
So there's a quote by Pope of the Coptic Church before the one right now, Pope Shenouda. He was a scholar, theologian, very, very educated, wrote over 100 books. In Arabic, it's امشي على مهلك عشان توصل بسرعة. Sounds fun, right?
Tell me more.
What it means, I hope I don't butcher this. Walk slowly so you can arrive faster. Imshi means walk. Ala mehlak means like just with care.
Yeah.
Like softly is the best way. عشان توصل بسرعة, so you arrive faster.
I'm not like a biblical scholar.
Does that make sense though?
It does. And this is going to tie in. And maybe you can correct me. I don't recall Jesus ever running.
I don't either.
I may be wrong, but what you just propped made me think of that.
But he did take a lot of time to go and pray.
Yeah.
Like his whole thing was retreat.
Yeah.
Which is in the vein of stillness, not hurried.
Right.
I have lived my entire life in a hurry, and it has not gotten me anything good.
I feel like you're turning that ship though.
I am, and better late than never, but faster, bigger, faster, no. Slow down. Just slow down. Slow down. Everything will be there when you pick back up.